Another example, which is much more urban strategy, if you will, is this game called El Núvol, which is Catalan for the cloud, and this is based on a commission by the Zona Franca, which is the port, the free port of, not the free, the port of Barcelona, where there's their autonomous entities, so yeah, tax things, etc. And so they were beginning to think about whether they could transform some of these industrial and logistic expanses in and around the port of Barcelona to turn them partially into mixed cities. And so, of course, that's a very interesting project, but it's very, very hard to address in a relatively, let's say, conventional way, because the legal framework is very different and it's open. One, two, there were no clear players, investors, etc., etc. And so it was more an exercise, I guess, on their part of trying to imagine what they could do to see whether they would want to do it. It's also important to see that, or for us it was important that in 1996, Stan Allen made a very important project exactly on the same site in the logistic activities zone of Barcelona, and he actually worked on a rather playful approach also. He made this manual, essentially, where he combined very basic architectural typologies or architectural, not even typologies, I would say, details that could be proliferated in a very open way based on a super open scenario when there is no clear, let's say, agents, no clear plan and no clear investment, if you will. So in this case, we organized and literally prototyped, as you can see, a board game, which we played for 2 years. So we have quite a lot of information here with different kinds of students from all over the place. These students, in this game, this is an urban strategy game that is based essentially on a board that identifies certain and maps certain opportunities of the site, and then the teams are organized in terms of interests. So first the teams work together, they decide what is it that they would like to do. Based on that, we make the teams, so the people, they work individually, they decide what they would like to do. Then based on affinities, we make the teams. And so the teams in a way are kind of pushing for, or lobbying even, for certain kinds of approaches. Yeah, there. So we tend to specialize a little bit. So it's not like everybody's doing everything, because then everything's easy, but also they're very, very boring. So here there were people that were more interested in pushing, a health-related logic. Other people that were pushing much more, creative industries. Other people were pushing much more social housing, etc. So this is one of the results of one of these games, drawn as it comes out directly of the game. And so this game, in a way, it's like a sophisticated version of Monopoly, but and also not designed for capitalist greed only. But essentially, it plays along the same ideas. And what's interesting about that is that it allows for very strategic decisions to be made and to be negotiated without necessarily going directly into a formalization, which sometimes becomes more problematic. But then based on that also, we did work, because we work on 2 years here, sorry. So we worked on highly detailed, even formalizations of projects that came out of that with different kinds of students. As you can see here, I'm not going to go in detail, but the point is that even at this very large scale and this very strategic sort of move, if you will, it also gave a very strong framework for very detailed architectural and urban projects to be developed, and some of them to be developed as final master's projects to a lot of, let's say, technical detail. And the last one, which I'm just going to go very quickly, is kind of the grandmother of the one that we're doing now, which is called Speculative Urban Futures, which essentially uses speculative urban design, what-if cards with questions that again take weak signals and sort of extend them or exacerbate them in a near future. And essentially the idea is that we're asking designers right now to think radically in these terms. What if some of the possible futures that we're concerned about right now were actually the case relatively soon? How should we now be reacting to this? How should now we be rethinking the way in which we're addressing urban and architectural design? What kind of challenges, what kind of methods, what kind of projects, what kind of impact should they have in order to care for this future to come? And these are some of the initial ideas that came with that, which I'm going to go in detail. And the last part that I wanted to present to you today is this part which I call serious games for radical urban visions, and this is it's published as a book chapter in a book that's about serious games precisely. Where, funnily enough, I think I was the only architect on a very, very thick book. And to me, the question here was, how can we reintroduce fun into the serious games? Because to me, the problem with serious games is that they're not fun. So if they're not fun, they're not games anymore. You don't want to play them, so why on earth would you know, it just beats the purpose. So how can we introduce the fun into the serious games? Because if serious games are only used in order to test some kind of, to me, very limited idea of what reality is or can be, and what kind of professional skills or capacity building should be, I think that it's a very, very poor way of addressing it. Typically, serious games started as a way to, of course, in the military, like nearly everything that is technology related, right, as ways of more cheaply testing, fighter pilots, for instance, skills. But these serious games, to me, are extremely reductive. I mean, essentially, they're not games. The only game aspect of that is that it says game over at the end and you don't die. But they're not games in the sense that they're not opening up this radical generative imagination that allows you to reinterpret the reality in which we're living in order to transform it, in our case as architects. So that's the account of a workshop that we did. In this case, it's undergrad, 4th and 5th year undergrad architecture school in Barcelona, where we proposed this project called Barcelona Radical Landscapes, and essentially the idea was to use some playful practices and game-based formats to proliferate imaginaries of Barcelona based on, again, on very complex, wicked problems having to do essentially from environmental aspects, social-cultural aspects, or demographic, economic aspects. So taking, again, some tendencies, some weak signals that are there, exacerbating them, taken to a level of extreme situations, but then thinking about, very creatively thinking about what effects, and potentially desirable, of course, effects, could this have to the city. So in this case, this is a project called the Seawall, and it, of course, works with this idea, with the worst prediction on sea level rise in the Mediterranean in Barcelona. And rather than just be catastrophic about it, if you will, or be conventionally engineering about it, that is trying to avoid the problem, here the idea was this quite radical idea of generating this seawall that would protect some parts of the city. Of course, which part is a problematic one, but that's another story. And which would also be used as a place to generate a new kind of city, a quite radical linear city, where the people that had been displaced from the places that were flooded could be living, but also other kinds of let's say, urban experiences and urban spaces and urban relations could begin to be imagined. There's some really strong images. Like this one, I believe very much in the capacity of these images, again, to generate a new understanding of the possibilities of the challenges that we have ahead. But again, this is an architecture school, a technical architectural school, so it went down to a detail of testing how this could work and how this defense could work in terms of hydrodynamics, essentially, but also and mostly how could it be used as a way to reinvent a new kind of city, if you will. So it goes from very detailed aspects of buildings, Herzberger before, as you saw, or to very, in this case, diagrammatic approaches that understand how could we work, how could we design this long line. No? So there's very few things that need to be designed, and then how this line could essentially be some kind of a new terrain vague, if you will, where all kinds of different things could happen, right? And here it's just an exercise on hybridizing different kind of architectural forms. So that was one. Another one that I will... No, I still have time, no? Yeah. Another one was this one that is working in a landfill in Barcelona, so a place that has been... It's essentially a fairly large platform that was supposed to be used for specific use that never got built. And so there's this rather large expanse of land where there used to be sea. And right now is most of the year it's not used except for a very famous music festival called Primavera Sound that works there and activates the space for a few weeks a year. But it's a fantastic space, it's already there, it's in a prime location, it's by the sea, and yet it is basically unused. So these people started thinking about how could they, if you will, generate or build, if you will, a space for indetermination. So how could we design an empty plot, if you will? How could we generate an architecture that's essentially an enabler, a technical enabler of many things to happen? This, of course, is like a re-understanding of some of the work of Cedric Price, amongst others. But essentially, the idea here is that there's a very, very strong, clear, and assumed division between the infrastructure that generates this perfectly serviced flat space on top, and a superstructure where anything could happen. It could happen in terms of like a high capacity or medium capacity or very low capacity and still have urban qualities that are untapped. So here you can see a plan on the left and some kind of an axonometric detailing on the right on how this structure could work or would work. This is very, very large scale, but it's essentially some kind of like a technical flooring, if you will, at an urban scale that will be serving this totally horizontal and totally serviced space, some kind of the dream of Claude Perrin and Yves Klein, if you will, made reality. So that was also then developed as a game, quite literally as a game that was geometry-based game, where based on the time that one had or the money that one had, you would be given different kinds of elements representing different types of configurations of the top floor, and based on that you could then organize all the bottom aspects to temporarily generate any of these things. That you could go from urban farming to festivals, to 50-year birthday, or to whatever it is that you can imagine. And the last one that I wanted to show of these serious games as radical urban visions is this one that tries to simultaneously address two very pressing questions. In this case, one was what to do with an existing and abandoned now oil drilling structure off the coast of a city just south of Barcelona. the oil platform is still there because it's very expensive to dismantle, and it's not so clear what to do with it. So at this point, we were trying to push for some kind of use of this oil platform. And on the other hand, an even more pressing question in the case of Barcelona, you just wait in Tallinn, you're going to get it, which is called mass tourism. And the idea here was, can we think of mass tourism not only as an extractive sort of economy, but again, exacerbate this tendency and understand that this mass tourism-based economy could also be feeding other economies that are much more social or more redistributive, to use Adrià's term. And in a very speculative way, that was the proposal. Now, how can we go from the extractive operation of the oil platform that right now is underused or not used anymore, and reimagine it, transport it actually, and reimagine it as a productive element that would allow, on the one hand, to solve a very important problem, which is the ferry terminal, the cruising terminal for Barcelona, which right now is in the port and generates a lot of pollution and other kinds of problems, very, very big problems of pollution essentially. And also to generate another space of, let's say, liminal legality to deal with the migratory crisis in the Mediterranean. But this ability that sometimes design has to make very concrete and very specific and generate certain visions that somehow package these very complex and extremely problematic questions together in a relatively synthetic way is something that has a lot of use well beyond the potentially instrumental use of all these practices that I'm proposing to you. And so finally, as a coda, just to tell you that now we're working with URI and the Estonian Association of Architects, amongst other people, also the Delft University, Split University, NC in Paris, and Elisava in Barcelona, in this project, European project in the Erasmus Plus framework called Speculative Urban Futures, that Yuri has been introducing you to, you know very well. And again, I went to the end. And again, what we did here, this is in Delft. Yuri's taking the picture, so he's not there. And what we're working with is the situation rooms where specifically we're using this basic framework of game-based design that I was addressing or presenting to you today, and turn it into a very specific methodology, in this case for the question of inhabitation and temporality, which is what we're working with, that has the idea of, or that has the purpose, sorry, not the idea, the purpose of generating or allowing designers to generate briefs that are relevant, and then they're well, relevant for imagining and prototyping desirable futures. This is something I'm not going to present in detail because we don't have the time and it's still in the making, but this is what we're doing now. And this is me in case somebody is interested, and thanks a lot for having me here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Do you have some connection with computer games?
Yes, we've used all kinds of, let's say, technologies or techniques, to be more precise, from very, very basic chalk on the pavement to computer script. That depends essentially on the team that we're working with. No? If we're working with a team either of students or professionals with certain skill sets, we always try to use this. So again, to me, the logic of games is precisely to be able to use whatever you have at hand in a way that it allows you to discover or sometimes uncover, right, possibilities or opportunities that are there that but lay dormant in a way, no? And that's why I was mentioning very briefly in the beginning how the use of constraints, both external constraints but also self-imposed constraints, is like a crucial aspect of the game. No? In a way, every game is based on reading the world through these sets of constraints and making fun of that.